Let me first state that I'm Mr. Beat, and I've lived in 2 of the 50 states in these somewhat United States. I spent about 4 years living in Nebraska. The rest of my life, I've lived here in Kansas.
The state in the middle of Middle America.
I'm currently here in Topeka, Kansas, the city where I was born, but also it's the capital of Kansas, the place where the government of Kansas does stuff.
That's a quote from the legendary Supreme Court Justice Louis Brandeis that basically explains federalism, or the idea that power is divided between the federal government and each of the 50 state governments. Indeed, the 10th Amendment of the United States Constitution says that, quote, all powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited by it to the states, are reserved to the states respectively, or to the people.
And this, Benedict Cumberbatch, is the whole freaking basis for the laboratories of democracy concept, as first articulated by Brandeis. And I think Brandeis was right.
The United States is totally like 50 different laboratories of democracy, all running different experiments at the same time. While we focus a lot on what the federal government is doing in DC,
the truth is, your day-to-day life is much more shaped by the people who work in your state capital. In this video, we're looking at how all 50 states govern themselves, from how they tax their citizens to how they pick their noses. I mean, judges, how they pick their judges. And for the Kansas stuff, I've got...
Hey y'all, this is Paris with Loud Light. We're a Kansas-based nonprofit focused on what goes on here in the Capitol and getting young Kansans to vote. And today, I'm here with Mr. Beat to talk about what goes on in this building.
Yeah, what goes on in that building? Huh? But yeah, Paris will be chiming in from time to time. And at the end of this video, I'm going to reveal to you, based on all these metrics, what is the most average American state, according to the most recently publicly available data.
Okay, let's begin.
Are you ready?
I was born ready.
So where are we right now? What is this place?
This is the Senate chamber here in Kansas.
Okay. They got nice leather seats.
first of all but one state legislature is bicameral, meaning they're set up like the federal government with 2 houses, a Senate, and House of Representatives. The exception, Nebraska, which has just 1 chamber. As such, Nebraska has fewer members of its state legislature than any other state. The smallest bicameral state legislature is Alaska, with 60 total lawmaker peoples, 40 in the House, 20 in the Senate. Minnesota has the most senators of all states, with 67 total lawmaker peoples in its Senate. New Hampshire has the most representatives in its lower chamber, and heck, the most total in its legislature, 424 total lawmaker peoples. And with 400 members, it has by far the biggest House of Representatives of any state. On average, each representative in New Hampshire represents about 3,300 people.
Oh, heck yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Let's go. But unfortunately, New Hampshire is not the average.
The average legislature membership is around 148 lawmaker peeps.
New Hampshire also has the longest requirement in order to run for its Senate.
You have to live in the state for 7 years to run for Senate. In Alabama, Louisiana, Maryland, Mississippi, and North Dakota, a representative's term is 4 years.
For all the other states, it's 2 years.
4 years is pretty standard for Senate terms in most legislatures, although for some states the terms are 2 years or even both 2 years and 4 years. These 16 states have term limits for their members. 37 states have term limits for governors.
Are there term limits in Kansas?
So there's actually no term limits for the state legislature here in Kansas. So House members are elected for 2 years, and then senators are elected for 4 years, and they're allowed to run as many times as they would like. However, for the governor's spot, there are term limits, and they can only run 2 times for a term of 4 years. This year is Governor Laura Kelly's last term, so that means Kansans will be voting for a new governor on the 2026 ballot.
Now I want to put you on the spot. So do you know who the longest tenured member of the Kansas legislature is? Can you take a guess?
I would guess maybe one of the legislative leaders, which might be, maybe Senate President Ty Masterson, maybe?
I don't know either. I'm going to look it up after this.
Yeah, she was way off. But I'm embarrassed for not knowing this too, because the longest tenured member of the Kansas legislature is Barbara Ballard, who is my representative, and I've even met her a few times. She's been serving since 1993. Most state legislatures don't meet the entire year, and these 4 states, they basically meet throughout the entire year, though. 46 state legislatures hold regular sessions every year. The other 4 states, Montana, Nevada, North Dakota, and Texas, meet every other year. The odd-numbered years.
All right, now I'm just going to say, well, that's odd. Well, that's odd. So when does the Kansas legislature usually meet?
So the legislature here meets annually, and they start every year on the 2nd Monday of January, and usually they go until April or May. After the first adjournment, legislators briefly go on break before they return for what's called a veto session, where they vote to override any bills that the governor rejects. Then after that, they adjourn until the following year, but in the meantime, they still have select committees that will meet until the next session.
Most state legislatures begin regular sessions in January. North Carolina likes to be all weird and start in April.
Those freaks?
You have to be at least 18 years old to run to be in the legislature for most states. In Kentucky, Missouri, New Hampshire, New Jersey, and Tennessee, you have to be 30 years old to run for the Senate. Huh, dang, that's old.
How do states pay for their bills?
Well, first of all, every state is dependent, at least somewhat, on federal funding. But the state most dependent on federal funding? Alaska. The state least dependent on federal funding? New Jersey. Otherwise, every state mostly raises money from a combination of property taxes, income taxes, and sales taxes. 42 states have a state income tax. These states have a flat income tax. These states tend to tax the wealthiest folks more. These states don't have a state income tax.
But that doesn't mean folks there ain't getting taxed.
Louisiana, Tennessee, Washington, Arkansas, and Alabama all have the highest sales tax rates in the country, while Oregon, New Hampshire, Montana, and Delaware have no sales tax. Holy dang. Some of the highest property taxes are seen in places like California, Illinois, New Jersey, New York, and Texas.
What about corporations? Those poor corporations.
Well, 44 states have some kind of corporate income tax, with the highest rate being in New Jersey. What about excise taxes or taxes on certain products? Well, pretty much every state taxes alcohol, cigarettes, and gas, and if cannabis is legal there, they tax it too. Alcohol taxes tend to be highest in Washington and lowest in Wyoming. Cigarette taxes tend to be highest in New York and lowest in Missouri. Gas taxes are highest in California and lowest in Alaska. Cannabis taxes also tend to be highest in Washington and also tend to be lowest in Missouri. Oh, don't be fooled. Cannabis sales generated nearly $256 million in tax revenue for Missouri last year alone.
Regarding a balanced mix of all types of taxes, I think Idaho, Indiana, and Utah have done a pretty good job finding that sweet spot. What's a unique challenge that Kansas has trying to collect enough tax revenue compared to other states?
So here in Kansas, we actually don't get a lot of tourists. So a lot of the tax revenue that we get is from Kansans themselves and not from anyone out of state.
So I remember vividly a few years ago, there was a bit of a controversial governor, Sam Brownback, who had his own tax plan, if you want to get into that.
Yeah, so here in Kansas, we are actually known for what is called the Brownback tax experiment. That is when Governor Sam Brownback and the Republican-led legislature severely cut income and corporate tax here in Kansas. That led to a major revenue shortfall, which is known as the Kansas budget crisis. This budget crisis got so out of hand that in 2017, the Republican-led legislature voted against their leader, Governor Sam Brownback, to end the tax experiment.
Kansas recovered from this tax experiment though, right?
So we did recover. However, in 2024, the Republican legislature began to do more Brownback-style income tax cuts, which have actually led to revenue shortfalls in 2026. So now we're kind of going back to Brownback.
They didn't learn history. What about other challenges?
So right now, the legislature here has a major overspending issue. A lot of Kansans may not know that while the governor will send the legislature an initial budget, the legislators are actually the ones who come up with the final budget and what we spend money on.
Sometimes, unfortunately, we have to give our data to corporations. For example, my family and I are looking for a new car. We've had to go to some dealerships and give them our personal information, and now they won't stop calling us.
But I hate to break it to you, every time you go online, giant corporations are also stealing your personal data, and then data brokers are turning around and selling your personal data to anyone. Stuff like your addresses, your phone number, even your political beliefs and income level.
But you want to know one way I fight back? By using Delete Me.
Delete Me proactively removes our home address, phone numbers, and family details from the internet. What I like about Delete Me is that it sends you these personalized privacy reports showing what they found, where they found it, and what they deleted. I've been using it for several years at this point, and it's done a really good job scrubbing my personal information from all kinds of messed up sites out there.
Protect your personal information and your family's personal information by going to joindeleteme.com/MrBeat. You get 20% off Delete Me consumer plans right now. Join deleteme.com/MrBeat or the QR code right there. I know some of you love QR codes.
I am obsessed with them.
But anyway, use code MrBeat at checkout. And thanks again to Delete Me for sponsoring this video. Yeah, so we're totally still at the Capitol. We totally didn't record this little section here later on because we forgot to record it when we were there. And this is not a green screen behind me. Oops, it's not a green. This is actually what you see behind. Okay, anyway.
Which states are more Democratic? No, I'm not talking about the Democratic Party. I'm talking about Democratic with a lowercase d. Well, first of all, Minnesota has the highest voter turnout. Hawaii has the lowest. According to the cost of voting index, Washington, most recently ranked number 1, has the easiest state to vote in. And Mississippi ranked as the most difficult state to vote in.
Indeed, states run elections, and each state runs elections differently.
Still, most states have more in common than differences. Only 3 states, Alabama, Mississippi, and New Hampshire, don't allow early in-person voting. All states allow mail-in voting in some form, but some are much stricter about it than others. These states automatically mail a ballot to every registered voter. These states only let you vote by mail if they approve of your excuse for doing so. 36 states currently require some form of voter ID to vote.
How strict is Kansas compared to other states when it comes to voter ID laws?
Yeah, so Kansas has some of the strictest voter ID laws in the nation. We definitely require photo ID here, and recently the Secretary of State has been really focused on maintaining the voter rolls, taking off inactive voters, and we also have multiple deadlines before both the primary and general elections here.
A ballot initiative allows citizens to propose new laws or constitutional amendments for people to vote on. A referendum allows people to vote on laws or constitutional amendments. These 26 states have some type of citizen-based ballot measure process.
Kansas is one of 24 states in the country that does not have a citizen-led ballot initiative process. So how does that shape Kansas politics compared to other states?
So in Kansas, it shapes a lot because we don't have citizen-led ballot initiatives, but we do have, I guess, legislator-led ballot initiatives, because in the Capitol, they can put on the ballot constitutional amendments with a 2/3 majority. And we saw this happen in 2022 when they put a constitutional amendment on the August primary ballot to allow legislators to restrict and ban abortion. As you're about to find out in this next section of the video, we actually have one coming up this August 2026, and it is voting on whether to politicize our Supreme Court here in Kansas.
Okay, how about after the votes are in?
Most states allow counting ballots before Election Day. These 10 states require election officials to wait until Election Day to start counting ballots.
So how do states get judges? Don't worry, I'm not gonna judge you if you don't know this.
38 states use some form of election to pick at least some of their judges. There are generally 3 types of such elections: partisan elections, nonpartisan elections, and retention elections. In partisan elections, judges run for office with a political party affiliation listed on the ballot next to their name. These states do this. In nonpartisan elections, judges run for office, but no party affiliation is listed on the ballot. These states do this. In retention elections, a simple yes-no vote is applied to predetermined candidates appointed by the governor from a list of qualified candidates. These states do this. These 8 states don't elect any judges by popular election at all. Yep, judges in those states are all appointed.
How do we pick judges in Kansas?
So currently it is a merit-based selection process where a group of lawyers come together and select 3 judges, and then the governor picks one of those 3 judges. Kansans also vote on these judges on the ballot through retention votes.
How might that change soon?
So the Kansas legislature placed a constitutional amendment onto the ballot here in Kansas in August 2026, and it would basically get rid of this process and reintroduce electing partisan judges to our Supreme Court.
So why are some people upset about this amendment?
It's widely known that the state legislature has been beefing with the state Supreme Court for several years now, so a lot of folks have been seeing this as a political move.
Social issues are where the two Americas often really do show up.
Ever since the Dobbs v. Jackson decision, abortion laws have varied wildly across the country. In these states, abortion is legal at any stage. In these states, it's legal through the 2nd trimester. In these, it's legal through the 24th week since the last menstrual period began. In these, it's legal before fetal viability. In these, it's legal through the 22nd week since the last menstrual period began. In Utah, it's legal through the 18th week since the last menstrual period began. In these, it's legal through the 12th week since the last menstrual period began.
I never thought I'd say menstrual period so much in a video.
In these, it's legal before a heartbeat is detected. In these, it's completely illegal.
How about cannabis legalization?
It's a patchwork. Cannabis is currently legal for recreational use in 24 states and legal for medical use in 40 states. Idaho arguably has the strictest laws against it.
How about the moral panic against transgender folks?
States like Florida, Idaho, Kansas, and Oklahoma have some of the most anti-transgender laws in the country. Wait, Kansas?
By using a controversial gut-and-go procedure where lawmakers can skip bill processes by placing bill contents into other bills, the Kansas legislature passed an anti-trans bathroom bounty bill. Now, any person who believes another Kansan is using the incorrect bathroom can sue that person for money, while also allowing the Attorney General to investigate as well. After passing, it made national headlines everywhere, as it is one of the most extreme anti-trans laws in the nation.
27 states still have the death penalty on the books.
Man, Florida, has been leading the way with executions lately.
They carried out 19 in 2025 alone, nearly 40% of the national total.
Probably no surprise here, but the states with the most people tend to be the states with the biggest economies.
California, Texas, New York, and Florida, or the Big Four, as I tend to call them, are the only states in the country with an annual GDP exceeding $1.5 trillion. In fact, if California was an independent country, it would have the 5th biggest economy in the world. Vermont has the lowest annual GDP.
But GDP sucks as an economic metric. How about GDP per capita?
Well, New York and Massachusetts win there, and Mississippi and West Virginia are at the very bottom.
How about median household income?
Maryland and Massachusetts once again win there, and yeah, sadly, Mississippi and West Virginia both once again at the bottom.
But cost of living, eh?
Okay, now Mississippi and West Virginia don't look so bad. Mississippi and Oklahoma both are the most affordable states to live in, while Hawaii and Massachusetts are the most expensive states to live in. Washington currently has the country's highest minimum wage at $17.13 an hour, while 20 states have the same minimum wage as the federal minimum wage. Nearly $10 an hour difference is kind of crazy. 26 states have, quote, right to work laws, which say workers don't have to be a member of a labor union.
How about the social safety net?
Massachusetts and Minnesota lead the country with higher spending on public welfare programs, such as unemployment and child care benefits. At the bottom, states like Mississippi and Alabama. 40 states have expanded Medicaid under the Affordable Care Act. These 10 states do not, although Wisconsin does have a coverage gap because it lets all adults going through poverty enroll.
Maybe speak to what's been going on with Medicaid expansion in Kansas in recent years.
Yeah, so Kansas is actually one of the states that refuses to expand Medicaid. We're one of the few that have not. So it's popular here in Kansas, and it's a top priority for Governor Laura Kelly. Every single year, it is blocked by House Speaker Daniel Hawkins and Senate President Ty Masterson, who do not want to expand Medicaid here. So that is why it has not been expanded.
And speaking of poverty, Louisiana has the highest poverty rate, and New Hampshire has the lowest.
That's freaking right. States control most K-12 education policy.
And the vast majority of the funding they use for public education comes from state and local taxes. Some states lean into school choice, pursuing options like vouchers, education savings accounts, or charter schools. Other states focus more on traditional public schools. Basically, the darker the shade of red the state is on this map, the more school choice options the state tends to have. The darker the shade on this map, the higher the teacher is paid. And what do you know? Missouri and Mississippi are both facing significant teacher shortages right now. Go figure! New York spends more per student than any other state. Idaho spends the least amount. Dang, what a difference.
But that doesn't mean Idaho has the worst education system.
New Mexico often ranks dead last in both reading and math proficiency and also has the highest dropout rates. Massachusetts often ranks first when it comes to those things. In general, it's much more difficult to graduate in the northeastern states. These states also, along with California, tend to have the highest investment in special education.
You might be surprised to learn that each state has wildly different curriculum standards.
You got states like Texas and their Texas exceptionalism emphasis, in which they're learning Texas history in 4th grade and then again in 7th grade. That's 2 full years of just Texas history, man. Utah and Ohio make you take a standalone course in financial literacy,
which I'm personally a fan of.
8 states don't require a civics or government course in order to graduate high school,
which I'm personally not a fan of. What are some trends that you've noticed in Kansas in recent years regarding educational policy and programs?
Yeah, so every year educators have to fight for funding, and specifically special education funding, to be to their requirements. Also, legislators have began to be more involved in the day-to-day operations of a classroom. This year they started to require parents' permission for a student to protest, and they also banned cell phones in classrooms.
Sure, most Americans are Christian, but what kind of Christian?
Often when we look at this type of information, it's better to look at a county map. So, yeah, you're looking at a county map right now.
Unless you're not looking right now. Come on, Millie Bobby Brown. I got lots of maps on the screen. They're great. You're missing out if you're not looking at them.
As you can see on this map, there are a lot of Baptists in the South, a lot of Catholics in the Southwest, and a lot of Lutherans in the Northern Midwest.
But I like this map better.
This map shows religious diversity in the United States. The darker the county, the more different types of religion within each county. This map shows the most and least religious states. The darker the color, the more religious the state. In case you're wondering, Vermont is the least religious state, and Mississippi is the most religious state. And finally, this map shows the percentage of atheists in each state. The darker the state, the more atheists in each state.
Paris, if you were to guess the religiosity of Kansas in terms of ranking, what would you guess?
Maybe 10?
I figured you'd be either spot on or close. Kansas is the 9th most religious state, so you're pretty smart. I know.
No, I'm gonna be like, oh, I know. No, okay. No.
Flip your bangs. I know.
No, exactly. Be like.
While the federal government regulates the land and water of every state, some states like California and Vermont have stricter rules.
Hawaii and Vermont both have the most pristine air and water quality. West Virginia and Louisiana have the worst. This map shows the percentage of renewable energy generated in each state. Washington, Idaho, and Vermont all lead the way with renewable energy. Missouri, Louisiana, Mississippi, Florida, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Delaware, New Jersey, Connecticut, and Rhode Island are all way behind. The states with the most protected land are generally out west. And this definitely coincides with the states with the most federal land within their border. Dang Nevada, BLM maxing. Want to build something? There are generally less hoops to jump through in states like Missouri and Idaho, and more hoops to jump through in states like California and New York. That doesn't surprise you.
Every state has to deal with climate change and natural disasters. But which state has the most worries and which state has the least worries?
The most vulnerable state is probably Louisiana, which has a triple threat of sea level rise, increasingly powerful hurricanes, and flooding. The least vulnerable state is probably Vermont. The darker the state on this map, the more homeowners were likely to face high financial losses following a natural disaster in 2025. When we talk about infrastructure, we're talking about the basic things needed for a state to function properly. Most people automatically think about roads and bridges when they think of infrastructure, but they should also be thinking about sidewalks, parks, dams, ports, airports, railroads, public transit systems, telecommunications networks, water supply systems, power plants, schools, hospitals, law enforcement agencies, fire stations, heck, even banks to a certain extent. And believe it or not, multiple reports have concluded that Nebraska has the best infrastructure in the country. Alaska seems to have the worst, but at least they have a good excuse. It's the biggest yet least densely populated state, after all, filled with vast swaths of wilderness.
And we'll stop it there. There are plenty of other ways to compare the 50 states, and in this video, again, we're just focusing on how each state governs differently. So if you want some more differences, you're just going to have to wait there, Ghostface Killa.
So, as I made this video, I made a spreadsheet to help me try to figure out what that most average state was. If a state was in the most average range in a specific category, I marked it.
So based on which state got the most marks on that spreadsheet, what do you think the most average state in the United States is? What would be your guess?
New Hampshire. Is that a bad guess? I literally was just choosing a random state.
Indiana, believe it or not.
Oh, okay.
But sorry, Indiana, you may be the most average state, but Kansas is still the most mid. Oh! Thanks to Paris and Caitlin for collaborating with me for this video. If you live in Kansas, you should definitely check them out, but I'm gonna have Paris tell you more about them right now.
We are a Kansas-based nonprofit, and we are known for spreading the word on what goes on in this building over here, and also getting young Kansans to vote. So if you have not already, then please follow us on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, pretty much every platform. And thank you, Mr. Beat, for working with us to spread the word on what's going on here in Kansas. If you have not already, register to vote, tell your friends, tell your family, and of course, follow Loud Light. Also, if you have not already, then please like, subscribe to this channel, and also hit the notification bell. Ding!
And it's that time of the month. No, not that time of the month. It's the time of the month where I give a shout out to all my Patreon supporters who donate at least 15 bucks or more. All right, starting with my biggest donors in alphabetical order. Thank you to Alicia Solberg, Andrew B., Anthony Beckett, Austin Ciros, Brennan Fletcher, Carissa Ledesma, Chris McKinnon, Chums McGuffey, Clayton Carlisle, Corey Ryman, David Smith, Empty Machine, Jeremy Dunham, Jesus Carrillo, Joe Cook. Are you paying attention?
I am.
Joe Cook, Little Lufa, Mater Tenenbaum, Michael Bolick, Nick Everett, Pat Iapika, Patrick Stewart, Ralph.
Patrick Stewart.
Yeah, all these people actually paid me money, and it's amazing. Thank you so much. Okay, Patrick Stewart, Ralph WK, Raquel Jones, Robin Tooley, Sean Connett, Tim B, Zachary Pascalar, Alan Hines, Adam Christians, Andrew Schneider, Emily Glover Wilson, Grant Gagaza, Jack L, Jacob Birnbaum, Josh, Michael Burt, Nader A, Nathan Hale, Ralph Salty, Steve Bryan, TC, Ty Marwitz, Victor McLean, and Zachary F. Parker. And thank you for watching.
Woo!
And then thank you for staying curious.